Welcome to the Walk Around Podcast. Our goal is to share with you the insights, skills, processes, and leaders that are influencing the retail automotive landscape today. I'm one of your hosts, Nick Funch, as always, joined by Danny. What's up, Danny?
What up, Nick? Good to see you.
Can you believe it's December 20th already?
Absolutely not. I felt like we were just talking about our favorite Thanksgiving pie. All of a sudden, a few weeks have gone by and we're in the holiday season. We're looking into January, closing out the year.
I can tell you, I have enjoyed a lot of pecan pie since Thanksgiving, and I need to get back on the wagon. But super excited about our guest today, Ryan Fitzgerald, who's the vice president at Dealer Policy. And Dealer Policy provides insurance seamlessly within kind of the automotive transaction. Really interesting conversation. I think the timing is nice too, because as every dealer in the world is thinking about 2022 and how can they kind of elevate their game. And I think he shares some interesting information about real data of what kind of their dealer partners are seeing from a performance side. Danny, what did you kind of take out of that conversation?
Yeah, no, I think everything you said is totally spot on. And I think as we look at the industry and just where things are headed, how do we add in a lever of potential savings for a consumer that could translate into, like we talked about, a more luxurious car option, F&I products, and it's really adding options to the consumer, which is a win for them and it's a win for the dealer. So I think some of those stats really make it real, and it was a great conversation.
So check it out, have a listen. Here's Ryan Fitzgerald from Dealer Policy. Ryan, thanks for joining us. We're glad you're here on the Walk Around Podcast to talk about dealer policy, kind of the ecosystem of consumers and what they need to think about when they budget for a vehicle. And I know you got an interesting story, though. How did you end up in like dealer policy, car insurance kind of world? Give us some perspective there.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. First off, Nick and Danny, really, really appreciate it. Happy to be here. I know you guys usually have kind of world-class CEOs, OEM C-suite on this podcast. So I'm glad you invited a lowly person like me. But yeah, I had an interesting perspective, and I always share it because I don't seem like much of a car guy, if you will, when I'm typically meeting with dealers who are clients at Dealer Policy. But I've been a lifer. Our family owns 4 dealerships up here in Burlington, Vermont, independent dealerships. And since I can remember, my first job was, what do we call it? Certified test drive specialist.
Yeah, certified test drive specialist. That sounds important.
Yeah, so I didn't do anything. I went there. We call it the shop. We always call the main dealership the shop. And I would spend Saturdays and Sundays, and I'd have my little stash of license plates, and I'd run around and bolt them on to the different cars and pretended like I was doing something there. So yeah. I've done that, and I've been in sales and F&I, and of course we own the stores in the family as well. And then went off to school, UVM up here in Burlington, and studied math and finance, and decided to take a little bit of a different direction. And let my family and my brother Travis, who's the co-founder and CEO now of Dealer Policy, run the dealerships. And I went to explore investment banking.
Yep.
Good old Wall Street. That turned out to be a blast.
Yeah, you think a retail showroom and a car store is competitive. Welcome to Wall Street, right, Ryan?
Oh my God, yeah. It was a good experience.
Yep.
Worked on private placements, M&A, IPOs, and sort of the industrial and technology sectors. But it was a grind. It was a 2 a.m. kind of trip, Monday through Saturday. I didn't see my wife for the entire first year of our marriage, I would say. Yeah. So that kind of was a bit of a struggle, but was cruising along after a few years, and I got a call from my brother Travis, and he said, "Hey, I got this idea and this business we're building up in Vermont. I said, okay, it's called dealer policy.
Okay.
What the hell is that? And he goes, it's basically, insurance, auto insurance, traditional auto insurance for the automotive retailing process.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've been, witnessing lately at the dealerships is this crazy thing where we're kind of partner. I'm giving away the real early secrets and founding of dealer policy here, but he said I partnered with this local insurance agency, just traditional P&C insurance agency.
Yep.
And we're still partners with them today. We own that business now, but and they're helping our car buying customers with auto insurance. And it's this independent agency, which means a choice model. All these different insurance companies compete on it, like Progressive, Travelers, MetLife, Liberty Mutual, and so forth. And so you ultimately can provide, competitive quotes and savings for the consumer. And that's a crux of what we do today. So it's simple. Somebody saves $65 a month and they can either buy a nicer car or just buy a car that they otherwise would not have, right? Like they're in the showroom and, the monthly payment's $486 a month, right? And they're like, I needed to be at 400. I can't get there. And there's usually only a few levers you can pull, right? It's the lending part of it. You can kind of reduce gross on the front end. You can do a few things, but then you're just like, all right, as a dealer, I got it to 450 and that's all I can do. But now auto insurance was another tool, and he was calling the local agency and saying, can you help me? And saving people 40, 50, $60. And at each store, we were selling nothing crazy, 2-3 more cars because of the auto insurance. And then even better, the real big thing that he got all excited about was selling more F&I products.
Right.
So again, it's kind of like it's an easy way to think about it. A buy one, get one free situation. You just bought an auto policy. You just saved 50, $60 a month. So why don't you go ahead and further protect your asset, your vehicle, with a VSC, warranty, gap, tire and wheel, whatever it was. And VSC is typically the prominent F&I product, obviously, as you guys know. And at each dealership, we were selling 2, 3, 4 more VSCs because of auto insurance as well. So that was a long side rail, and he got all excited about it. And I was like, nah, that's all right.
Yeah. I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm happy working till 2 a.m.
Yeah, it's a little bit rough down here, but I'm on the track and I'm getting there. So, just test that out for a little while. Let me know how it works. And so he did, and that's what happened. And a year or so went by, and it hadn't progressed a ton. It takes a while to build the category, and we'll talk about that. And we've been building this category for 7 years now. But he called me back, and I think we had 12 dealerships at that point. It's like, all right, we raised a little bit of money. We're out there testing it in beta, and it's really working. And I was like, 12 dealerships, it's working, kind of. What's revenue? And I had to have him walk me through the whole thing. And then he sent me some numbers, but I was still kind of like, nah, I can't do that. He sent me some numbers, and I saw that about 15%, I would say at that time, 15% of car buying customers were buying auto policies at the sale in the dealership for these stores. So that's 15 out of 100 buying their policy right there at the point of sale. And he showed me some stuff on products per deal and F&I gross, the basic things we just talked about. He's like, I think this thing has legs. And I was like, holy, forgive my language. I don't know if
that's all right.
Swear on air here.
No, that's all right.
I that's how I felt. I was like, wow, this really is a thing. And I got more and more excited, and ultimately I moved back up, and I got right on the road. That was my first thing, my first duty. Go out there and talk to dealer groups and potential partners. And I just wanted to know, really for myself, is this really going to be a thing? Is this going to be a thing for automotive retail? Does this have legs? And I literally, I remember to this day, I found out so fast, like dealers, I met with my first 10 or so dealers and they were like, why wouldn't we do this?
Right. It's a no-brainer, right? It's easy.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. It's a win-win-win for the carrier, for the dealer, for the consumer, for us, for partners, F&I providers. Like it literally, you can't think of somebody who doesn't win in the situation. So that's how I ended up here.
So it's a fan, and I think we're going to get into the model a little bit, but I think, I'm familiar with the space, and full disclosure, we're partners, right? Dealer Policy and JM&A Group, and I think it's been a healthy relationship. But the one thing that I just occurred to me in that conversation is there are only so many levers you can pull when it comes to kind of a budget for a consumer. And historically, it was term, which is not good for the dealership. It's not good for the consumer. When you're having to push that term out to get into a budget, nothing good comes from kind of extending that term out. The other thing is the dealer then has the choice. Do they want to kind of reduce their kind of margins within the transaction, wherever they want to do that, whether it's in, the front, the back, the trade, whatever that kind of looks like. And then, but I think to your point, the nice thing about kind of this within that budget ecosystem is it's not something consumers generally thinking about during the sales process, but it has a massive impact on their overall budget. And being able to kind of educate the consumer through that sales process and give them just truly options like, hey, you're under no kind of pressure to make a decision, but if it's something you want to consider through this thing, here you go, right? Is that kind of fair?
Yeah, that's totally fair. And all of that is spot on. And we found, and you're right on, like consumers aren't thinking about this. Like nobody thinks about this. Right. Nobody thinks about auto insurance. Did any of us wake up this morning and say, I ought to shop my auto insurance? If I can save $50. No, we don't do that. But at the point of sale, it's a perfect time to explore that. And we've really found that there's this kind of 30-minute window-ish where we'll call it conversion rate. So, acquiring a policy or buying a policy as a consumer is maximized versus any other point in the process, in the car buying process. And there's this full, funnel of the process starting on, let's say, a research website, like a Car Gurus.
Yeah.
And then maybe you go to the dealer website. And then ultimately, maybe you find yourself as a consumer in the CRM. And then there's a showroom. And then there's an F&I menu. And then there's post-sale marketing and all this stuff. But really, right at that point of sale, the closer you get to like the simple question, I guess, for an easy way to think about it, that comes from an F&I manager. What are you doing for insurance? I need your binders. I need your ID cards. I got to get your paperwork and your loan, process, and I got to attach it here. And then you go, I bought myself during the pandemic. Maybe I was bored, but I bought 3 cars during that time. And I saw it over and over. We all probably have. It gets to that one point where you need the binders and ID cards. And so you think about it naturally and you go, oh, what am I doing for insurance now? Maybe I'll call Progressive or Geico. I got to call my agent. So it's a good time in general, simply. And then you also have some time. It's just convenient. Like there's typically a little kind of 20, 30-minute window before you go into F&I, right? In a typical dealership workflow.
It pains me to hear you say that 20 to 30 minutes wait.
I know,
but you're speaking the truth, Brian. Nobody's going to debate that.
I know everybody denies that fact, but it is true. So it's a convenience thing, and it just makes sense to do it in that process. And it's very, by the way, it's very common in other countries in general. Yeah. I've just been learning about this myself recently. In countries like Australia and Germany are good examples. Australia, 1 in 2 people buy their auto policy at the point of sale through a dealership.
Wow, 50%.
50%. In Germany is about a third. 1 in 3 people are buying a policy, and they have a big part of that is they have kind of less regulatory pressure, I would say, legal and regulatory pressure. So it's a little bit easier, but it's a thing in other countries, and it makes a lot of sense to do it, in the process when you're buying a car and explore savings and so forth. So,
Danny,
Yeah,
lots to digest there. What are you thinking about, bud?
it's interesting, and I like your kind of analogy, Nick. With this, it's really less about kind of looking at the levers and pulling a lever here, pulling a lever here. It's about adding a lever and seeing how that kind of dynamic plays into the whole car buying conversation. And Ryan, as we've talked, I think you've got great sight lines into the whole car buying process, and obviously dealer policy works with a lot of dealers. And as we wind down the year, happy holidays, everyone, and look into 2022. Just curious, what are you looking forward to for the industry this year, and what should dealers be thinking about?
oh my God, so much. Obviously, that's a loaded question. The most fundamental thing, I would say, is it's a bit of a normalization of everything, right? That's an easy
Life.
Yeah, life as we know it. But obviously, there's just been so much change, and we don't have to get into all the pieces of it, but kind of like just bizarre things happening, right? It's a very unique point in time, and I don't want to ring the same old inventory bell.
Right.
That is such a big thing right now, and it's such a unusual thing, and I hope that things normalize there, and dealers are better able to kind of right size and offer consumers what they need, and the whole supply chain kind of right sizes. In a question mark is when's that going to happen, right? And I imagine it's going to happen sometime in 2022, maybe middle of the year, once we figure out the issues around chips and a bunch of other things. But I'm excited for myself and our dealerships and dealer partners and dealer policy. Obviously, that's had a big impact on auto insurance and P&C distribution as well. Like in our model, it's sort of dependent on sales, right? And making sure that all gets kind of right sized, and then set aside that typical issue. Also, just excited for NADA, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be a big deal for us. I know that we're making a big investment there this year, and to explore everything that's going on out there. Won't ring the other typical bell, but I will. Digital retailing, and that kind of tide and that momentum. And it'll be interesting, players and functionality and how all that emerges. And on our side, there's integrations galore, with CRMs and DMSs and lending platforms and menus. So on the technology side, I think there's a lot to, be excited about and think about it and progress in this kind of crazy up and down time, I guess. So there's a lot there.
You touched on something. So Ryan, when I think about my retail days many moons ago, it was a very different business, but the insurance piece wasn't foreign, right? We would have customers come in that either didn't, in most cases, as I think about it, lacked insurance. And so we had a local guy we could call, and he would physically come to the store, right? And it was, I can remember like, hey, we're just waiting to get this kind of, policy bound here. And so we're kind of, but I think you touched on some of the technology enhancements, and technology has been accelerant for all of business, not just automotive, not just insurance, not just the way we retail in general. Speak to this is really a seamless kind of process when you think about kind of the way technology kind of flows and the way consumers interact within a store, isn't it? I mean, it's really there's really no hiccup to anything, right?
Yeah, no, that's a big part of it. And I think it goes back to fundamentals for a dealer that haven't changed in forever. And for us or insurance in general, like plugging that into the car buying process for a dealership has to be efficient. It has to be seamless. And quite simply, it has to go quickly, right? Like if I talk about it with dealers all the time, and a classic kind of objection is, really? Are you going to add another 30 minutes to my process? 30, better not be 45. I'll tell you that. Around auto insurance, like absolutely not. So it really, first of all, we always talk about how it doesn't add to the process, but it kind of fills a gap that's already there. 20, 30 minutes that you yelled at me about, Nick. But it sort of fills that gap, and it has to be seamless. Again, it has to flow in the process, and integrations are a big part of that. Like an example is a CRM integration, right? A lead automatically comes in and you have all the data that can kind of, say for our platform, dealer policy, it can push to our platform, pre-fill the insurance application, right? The name, address, and a bunch of other things to automatically generate quotes. And a lot of times in our process, a salesperson, as an example, will kind of introduce dealer policy and show the quotes and get them up to speed there, again, right before F&I. And it's a nice seamless part where ultimately the quotes and the savings and some carrier information will get populated into a menu. Is a good example. Yep. Darwin. We have a partnership with Darwin as well, and it shows that information in the menu, and F&I managers can review that, and again use auto insurance as a tool, just like we talked about before. Same fundamental things right there. So it all kind of flows, and that's just one example of technology and process. And we probably use 10 different processes, and maybe integration with just the menu only, with the websites, the DMS, et cetera. But technology has become, absolutely key. But in the end, it's solving just a fundamental problem of time and not adding too much burden to the process, and ultimately just resulting in a nice, clean consumer experience, right?
And so, I think one of the things I kudos to you, I think, for thinking about this is customers, there's friction created when they have to duplicate work. And so when they're kind of giving dealers information, and then they're having to re-give dealers information, and then potentially give it one more time, it creates like, man, you can't. So like connecting all those pieces, kudos to you. That's great. Glad you're thinking about it. But like you said, 6-7 years, you saw some early results that made you kind of take the leap from Wall Street into kind of this business. You certainly have a kind of book of business and some data that backs up kind of the results and why you're seeing the growth that you're seeing in dealer policy. Like some quick stats, what from a consumer standpoint, what are they experiencing when they in a savings, average savings, things like that? Do you have some data around that?
Yeah, no, off the top of my head. So from a consumer standpoint, our average savings on auto insurance and auto insurance policy is $64 a month. And then the $64 doesn't matter if you're not doing it consistently, right? Okay. And I am surprised by this myself over and over again, but we're doing it on average through the platform about 7 out of 10 times. The numbers come out and they change all the time. It's like 68, 69% month after month. So $64, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
A month to be saving, and doing that for 7 out of 10 car buying customers. I mean, that's pretty incredible. And that's just a result of, a platform like Dealer Policy, but really the fundamentals underneath of it, as we call it, choice. So that just means a bunch of different insurance companies compete on the platform. Again, like I mentioned, Progressive, Travelers, MetLife, Liberty Mutual, and you have APIs out to all these companies that do all this underwriting, right? And which is, in the past, historically, it's been very cumbersome. Like this hasn't been possible. This wasn't possible 10 years ago to put all this choice on a platform, do all the underwriting in 60 seconds, right? Not all the underwriting, but the first part of the underwriting, and then display them back up to the consumer. So that's amazing. And then from the dealership perspective, one crazy stat that I always find interesting as well, but we have about 100,000 transactions now, auto policy customer transactions, where the F&I gross on the back end is about, I think the last number was $453 higher versus the average overall transaction. So it's just a simple analysis. Here's all the dealer policy auto insurance customers. Here's your other million transactions that all these dealers have done. The average back end gross, I'm just making up numbers here, it's 1,500 here for your overall set of transactions, and it's 2,000, 19, whatever, for the auto policy buying customers. So it just kind of proves that basic point that we've been talking about again, that when people buy an auto policy and savings are generated, they're willing to spend more money in F&I. And even as a consumer, we can think in our heads, like, kind of makes sense. I'd do it. Right?
Well, I think it speaks to, even if you take the benefits to the dealer and the hard data you just provided kind of out of the equation, $64, I think was the number, is a lot of buying power. I think anyone works in a dealership knows what 15 to 20 bucks a month kind of gets you in buying power. And whether it's additional protection in F&I, whether it's maybe upgrading to a little more luxurious package or kind of the bigger car, whatever those things look like, it's real buying power for the consumer in the store. So definitely, I would encourage kind of everyone to explore this space. It's fantastic. Ryan, where can our listeners find you? I know dealerpolicy.com. Has it got all the information about kind of learn more, all the stuff there?
Yeah, everything's there. You can go right on the website, and a bunch of like a lot of sites, a bunch of drop down menus, and you can explore kind of the offering and general news and partnerships. And request a demo, further information. Of course, you can reach out to me anytime. My funnel is a little bit clogged up these days, but you can reach out to me but yeah, that's a great starting place. And obviously you can reach out to partners as well, like JM&A. You guys know a lot about this model as well, but yeah, it's a good starting place.
Well, Ryan, we appreciate the time. I think you talked about kind of your funnel is full, but I know that we've got some experience with the dealer policy team. They've always been fantastic, and I think helping to solve dealers, helping to create solutions for dealers with kind of consumer challenges in mind. And so, kudos to you and the dealer policy team. I think the conversation's been great, and appreciate you carving some time out of that busy funnel to tell us a little bit about your story, but also share some hard data that dealers can leverage for themselves. So thanks for joining us. And as we wind down the new year, happy new year to you and the dealer policy team. And I know that great things are ahead for you.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it, Nick, Danny. Thanks for having me on again. It was a pleasure, and happy holidays and new year to you guys as well. And we'll look forward to getting going here and having a nice 2022. So thanks.